I just wanted to open tonight and just say thank you first and foremost that you guys are here tonight and that you guys have continued to kind of come and be with us over the past couple of weeks as God is really moving Cornerstone into what we believe to be a season of just reassessing what the vision of our church is and what the desire is for the people that are gathered here to worship to move forward and honor God. So tonight we have a Q&A planned, and the reason for that is somewhat twofold. First, it is to elaborate on or continue to explain some of the things that were outlined the past couple weeks. I know that there was kind of a lot to unpack and to take in. So hopefully tonight will be a way to elaborate on some of those ideas that were presented. And the second is to answer the questions and the concerns that you all brought forward or that were brought forward concerning how this may affect us as we move forward as a church. And thank you again for addressing those. We had a lot of very difficult questions, but very good questions, and questions that I feel needed to be asked for anyone that's looking to honor God in service and worship. So Packy, Brian, and John agreed to step forward tonight and to take those questions and sort of answer those as honestly and biblically as they can. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and we'll get started with our first set of questions. So thank you, gentlemen, for stepping forward. The first question, I think, is a perfect one to sort of lead into. But just to ask, what initiated this new direction, and what was the process like getting to where we are now?
I don't know. Next question.
Okay. Question 2. We're going to go through this really quick, guys. We'll be done in about 10 minutes. Okay. Okay.
Our goal is to answer everything in one word. Well, I guess that was 3 words.
IDK.
Oh, yeah, that works. New initials. Just to throw out a thought before we get going that I've had and I've been praying a lot about. A couple weeks ago, Ryan shared just about the new vision that God's been laying on our heart as far as where to take us. And then last week, we talked a lot about structure and what it's going to look like. I think it's really important that we all, even going through all this stuff that we're talking about tonight, that we all really grasp the heart of the vision as opposed to getting hung up on structure. Because I think the heart of the vision is what we really need to get inside of us. Because if we miss the heart of the vision and have the structure, then we have nothing. But if we miss the structure even, but have the heart of the vision, we'll still be building kingdom. And we need them both. They're both important, but ultimately it's all driven by that heart for the kingdom and the heart for God. Let's not get hung up on structure. And a lot of what we're answering tonight, this isn't like a council of Nicaea or something that's laying down, here's how everything's going to be. A lot of it we don't have answers for yet. We don't know. We're going to give the best answers for some of the questions that we have. But again, just because, we provide an answer here, there's still a lot of things that are to be determined, and the church is ultimately going to be determining that moving forward. So to get into this question, let's just keep that, I guess, heart behind it is like, okay, that vision for the gospel and for the kingdom, that's what we need to aim after, and we'll tweak the structure as we go. But what initiated this is the last few years, if you've been coming to church here very long, some of us have been coming here longer than others, obviously. I know the Jules, and we've had a lot of change over, obviously, the past 30 years, but even over the past 5 years, there's been a lot of changes that have taken place. The demographic of our church has changed it was largely, campus-aged people, college people that have now graduated. Some have moved away, some have moved on to new things. And also within that, the spiritual kind of culture and atmosphere has changed as well. Over the past few years, or past, I'd say, year or two, possibly because of that kind of demographic change, there's been a lot of spiritual things that have changed, and I've had a lot of conversations, and other people have been having conversations about, where are we going as a church? Where am I going? And most of my conversations with people have been, I'm a Christian, I love God, but it's like, I don't know what's next. Like, where do I go next? And so there's this strong desire to have this one unifying vision that we're all pushing for as a church body. And that's kind of what sparked a lot of this. So some people went to Kim and discuss some of these things with him, just about the future of the church, where we're going. Because as a people, I think we're largely change averse. We don't like change in our individual lives. We don't like change corporately. And I know the church, if you look at the church, there's a lot of things that they kind of buck change and they want to stay the same for a really long time. And if that's what God's calling us to be, I think we need to settle with those things, but we also need to be open with what things are we able to change that God wants us to change. So people went to Kim and talked to him just about some of these concerns and ideas and thoughts, and then he gathered a few other people that were leading some other things in the church and presented a lot of this to them and basically said, we're entering a new season in our church family. I want you guys to pray and discuss just what you guys think about where we're going. And Brian's going to get briefly into that. So those people got together, and that group too, I think Ryan said it the first week. I just want to throw it out there that nobody was intentionally excluded from that group for any reason at all. Obviously not everybody was in that group, but I think the blessing that we have in our church is that we have a very, very high percentage of church members that are serious about God, that love God, that want to see his kingdom built, that have very unique talents and giftings that I think fit into this new vision, that even if they didn't play a role in that 13 group of people, they're going to play a role moving forward. And so I just want to stress that, because I just don't want anybody to feel like they were personally excluded intentionally for any reason. So that group of people got together, and Brian will get into that process. But the only purpose for that group, for that time, was to get the ball rolling, basically. It wasn't to establish, here's what everything's going to be in our church from here on out, and we're going to present this structure that everybody then falls into. But the ball had to get rolling, because that's the biggest thing, is overcoming inertia and to get the ball rolling. And so that got the ball rolling, discussing vision, discussing hearts. And everybody in that group, in one way or another, had relationships with other people in this church. And so they've had conversation with those people, and they were able to kind of represent that view also. So that group got the ball rolling and discussing these things and put together, what they feel like God was calling us to as a church. And then that group is done. Like, that group is no longer. That group wasn't put together to establish leadership. That group wasn't put together. Some of the people in that group might be serving in different areas of what we're going to present, but that's all the purpose of that group was to get the ball rolling in that direction, that vision direction. That's kind of what we're going to get into tonight.
Yeah, so to give you guys some more information about how we went from having a request from Kim to work on some new ideas to all of the stuff you've heard over the next couple of weeks, I wanted to kind of give you a snapshot of the work that the 13 of us did, so that you understand our hearts and where we came from and sort of the things that we labored on. And hopefully that will help you kind of really get inspired by the things that inspired us. We started with a questionnaire that Packy put together. Before we had a single meeting, each of the 13 people in that group filled out a questionnaire about really a wide-ranging set of topics having to do with the state of the church, where we are now, where we would like to see ourselves in a few years, our strengths, our weaknesses, things that we can do really well, things that we can do better at. And when we went through those questionnaires and kind of compiled the results, we found totally that there were a lot of strengths in the church. One of them, Packy mentioned, is just the high quality of committed members that we have here. And we're so blessed to have that. But one of the other things that we found was that there seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect or a chasm between some of the potential and giftings in people that we see in the church, and then the way that those are being used in church life. We see so much potential and gifts, and really in the lives of everybody here, but there was a limit to how much that was actually working in the church body as a whole. And we also saw some opportunities to really minister to people in ways that were very personal and relevant and life impacting that maybe we weren't fulfilling to the best of our ability. So as we started working, we were really kind of thinking about those two things. How do we maximize the potential that's inside everybody that God has put as part of this church? And how do we maximize our impact on everybody in this church through ministry and everybody that God's going to bring to this church? So we started meeting maybe like late February, late November, early December, I don't remember. It was right around the holidays, and basically through a series of weekly meetings, we started discussing the best way to accomplish those things. And what we ultimately landed on was this idea that our vision for this church is to be a place where we awaken God's callings within people, within ourselves, within each other, within the people that God's going to bring here, and within the world around us. And by doing that, we reflect God's glory to the world. And so we spent a lot of time, we kind of had that core idea at first. It wasn't very well fleshed out. We spent a lot of time discussing the wording of that vision statement because we believe the wording is very important. We probably had, over the course of a couple months, like 6 or 8 maybe drafts of the vision statement. I mean, it changed a lot. Not that the vision changed, but the way we worded it changed because we knew that the wording of the vision statement was very important. And if it didn't say exactly what we wanted it to say, then it could kind of lead us down a path that maybe we didn't want to go to. And so over the course of a couple months worth of work, we arrived at this vision of awakening God's purposes within us and reflecting God's glory to the world around us. And as we cemented that as the vision of what we saw the church doing, we then started asking questions about what aspects of church activity or church life are essential to achieving that vision. In other words, what are the things that if we didn't ever do them again, we would fail at the vision? What are the things that are the most important? And we made a list of those things, and that list eventually grew into that sort of 3-column chart that Josh shared last week, where we separated church life into, large group functions, small group functions, individual functions. So we spent some time fleshing that out and kind of coming up with ideas for a structure of servanthood that would allow us to maximize the potential in this room to achieve that vision. Now, throughout the course of this process, the 3 of us kind of acted as liaisons to Kim and the elders. We met with them 3 different times throughout the course of this work. So each time we met with them, they asked us some questions. They gave us some feedback. A couple times they sent us back with questions back to our group, things that they would like us to flesh out a little bit more or to figure out. So there was a continual dialogue with them. They've been aware of everything that we have been working on up to this point. And so I guess it was kind of the end of February, we reached the point where we felt like we had the vision nailed down. We had agreed on the wording. And the last thing that was left to do was to sort of transition between this group of 13 people coming up with this stuff and then actually implementing it into church life. And so the last phase of the process was we broke that group of 13 up into what we called transition teams. There was one transition team for each area of church life. So one team worked on what's happening in the corporate meeting, one team worked on small groups, one team worked on individual discipleship. And the role of that transition team wasn't to set all of the policies and standards or doctrines or anything like that. It was mainly to set a series of expectations or job descriptions, you could say, for the key leaders in those areas, the team captains. And also to kind of set out what are the first priorities as we go into the next months that the team captains are going to work on. So there was a lot that you saw in the structure that Josh presented last week that may not happen all at once, and we needed to identify what the priorities were. And so the transition teams did that. We recruited and identified the team captains, kind of gave them their job descriptions, and with that, the work of the transition teams really came to an end, and the work of the 13 as any kind of body came to an end. And so from here on out, it's going to be the work of the team captains with the pastor and elders to kind of carry forward the vision that we set out.
And just to add a little something, just really short, I think it's important to note that this group of 13 people that Packy was talking about, when we met, pretty much every time, there wasn't like one person necessarily that was heading it up and that everyone was kind of needing to conform to, but really everything that we did, everything that we kind of decided and thought about, we waited until it was a unanimous decision before we continued to move on. We wanted to make sure that this was a collaborative effort and not just something that was in the idea or in the mind of one person that had an agenda. So I just wanted to make sure you are aware of that.
Great. Thanks, guys.